Meeting to order Wednesday, June 19th at 7 p.m. with the SRA. First is the minutes of June 5th, 2019.
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
We have a motion, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? That's unanimous. Next,
Was Brittany there?
um,
Hang on.
yeah, Brittany was there, but we have a quorum.
Oh, okay, all right.
Next on the agenda is bringing up right now we're going to discuss the master developer request for proposals. This is just an update from Washington Capital. They're one of the primary stakeholders, the banks that are taking the project over, and Joe Versace is the representative. I can say we've been working with Joe and the relationship the SRA has had with him over the past several months. Going through this process has been very professional and very good to understand both sides of this project. So I'd like to turn it over to Joe for some updates, and then we could go to some questions of the board after he gets done speaking.
Great, thank you. I guess I'll just stand here so I can address everybody, if that's okay. Let me introduce myself from Washington Capital. I think that's a name most people aren't familiar with. My name is Joe Versace. I'm Senior Vice President, and I run the Boston office of Washington Capital Management. I personally have been involved with real estate investment management for close to 40 years, the last 24 of which have been here in Boston. I'd like to think that makes me local, but my wife, who has much deeper roots, informs me I'm probably 5 generations away from that designation. So maybe our grandchildren will get that. Washington Capital Management is headquartered in Seattle, and we invest on behalf of pension plans, primarily union Taft-Hartley plans, as well as some state plans as well. And while we invest in stocks and fixed income as well as real estate, out of the $6 billion in client capital we manage, well over $5 million is in real estate investments. So really that is the firm's primary focus and what we've been doing. We have offices in Seattle, Los Angeles, Portland, San Francisco, Juneau, Alaska, and Boston. Boston is really where we run the East Coast. Our investment with this project goes back to 2017 when we made a loan to the prior developer, and that loan was backed by mortgage interests in some but not all of the parcels here at Union Point. We essentially call them the residential parcels, although that's not exactly technically correct, but they were backed by some residential entitlements. As we all know, the prior developer failed to meet their obligations to the project and to us, and as a consequence of that, on February 7th of this year, we foreclosed and took title to the property. I guess it's fair to ask, that was over 4 months ago, what have we been doing for the last 4 months? And we really spent our efforts in 3 primary areas. The first primary area, honestly, has been just trying to understand, what we had with the dog that bought the car, and now we got to figure out what the car is. So it's taken a lot of effort, and I tremendous thanks to Eric and Jim on the staff here, as well as Tom and David and others, who have really helped us to understand all the underlying obligations and documentation that governs this project. So we've taken our time, and I think we have a very clear picture of what that is now. I would not suggest it's entirely done. I'm not prepared to hang a mission accomplished banner anywhere yet, but we worked hard to get there, and I think we're getting close to really understanding where we are. The second area we put some focus into is, as I said, we were a lender on some of the parcels. There was another lender that was another primary lender on other parcels, and they were represented by the related companies out of New York. We have a very good relationship with the related companies, and what we've ended up with now has been a strange mix where I think no one ever intended this project to be bifurcated between different ownership, and now it is. We have heard loud and clear from the SRA and from other stakeholders, and clearly, in our own minds, having bifurcated ownership is at best unwieldy and inefficient, and at worst unworkable. So one of the things we've tried hard to do, and we're getting close to getting there in terms of an agreement, is we're trying to reconsolidate the primary ownership under Washington Capital's umbrella. So we're working with Related to achieve that, where we can all, again, have one voice into the whole project. We think that's important for this thing to go forward. That's taking some effort. We're very close there. And of course, the third thing that Tom mentioned is we're working to put together a request for proposal. At the moment, there is no master developer designated. That developer designation has been pulled from the prior developer. Clearly, we understand real estate very well. We're not a development company. We need a development partner that understands development. So we've been working, again, closely with Jim Narek and the SRA, and they've been incredibly helpful in this process to put together this proposal. It's a work in progress. We've made tremendous progress on it. We're not quite there. We're getting closer. This proposal will help us define what we consider to be, and we hope everyone considers to be, and certainly everyone has to consider it on the SRA side as well, to be a best-in-class developer. You know, our wish list is a developer that has large tract experience, that has the resources and financial and other resources to move the project forward, that has a multi-product type development experience, and very importantly to us at least, has Massachusetts-based experience, because we think that's very critical. So those are the attributes we're looking for, and we're putting together an information set that will help us to explain the project fairly concisely to the development community. One of the things we've been working on, I think I'm pretty excited about, is a mapping system that will, I think, lay out the story very well for developers to help them understand the overall project. We're making very good progress there as well. So again, working very closely with the SRA and other stakeholders so that we can go out there together and find the right developer for this project. Because, you know, quite honestly, it's been a long time, and this project deserves to move forward. It's got a lot of positive attributes, and it just needs the right team to move it forward. So that's where our focus is right now.
Steve, before we're gonna go to the board first, and then we'll, for questions, then over to the audience, okay? Joe, do you have anything else? Sorry. Okay. Board up, Kevin.
If I could you return to on the issue of Related in Washington Capital? Am I to understand that, and correct me if I'm wrong, based on what you said, that you're going to purchase Related's interest so that you'd be the sole?
Yeah. We're in negotiations now for that, and I think
Okay.
we're pretty close on negotiations. It's not a done deal, but we're close on negotiations. There are some other ownership of some other parcels here, and some other pieces of ownership, but that would, I think, combine the vast majority of ownership under our
Under
umbrella.
yourself. Okay, and this, the last question I would have is, in terms of a time frame with the RFP process, do you have a projection at all? Or I know you said it's a work in progress, and I can appreciate it's a monumental task to get to understand all the intricate parts of it. But now that you've had the opportunity to kind of look at that landscape, do you have maybe a goal in mind as to any dates?
You know, we're working hard on it. One thing I can honestly tell you is that no one has a more vested interest in moving it forward than we do. As you all probably know, this is a fairly expensive project to maintain. One of the things that we have done, even though we're not technically the master developer, therefore we don't technically have the obligations of the master developer, we're taking some of those on because it's in investors' interest of the project to do that. So there's a pretty significant cash outflow for us, so we really want to move forward, but you know, I don't want to give you a date and then miss it, to be honest.
No, I understand. I didn't know that you had something in mind that you were ready to put forward, but I understand where you're coming from.
Kelly, questions?
I'm all set for right now.
Dave?
Just to follow up on Kevin, so ultimately, if you assume Related's interest, you will be the only entity at that point, as you envision it, that's negotiating this deal with the master developer and with to us and everybody else? What, are they basically turning over their keys to the project as you envision it? Or is
That's
it
correct,
something
that's
else?
correct. It would be a complete purchase of their interest.
Okay.
Therefore, we would have complete control.
Great.
That's what we're
Gotcha.
imagining.
And you sort of sideways mentioned at the last small auction of the various small parcels, that one you're probably not gonna touch?
At this point, we have no plans. There might be an interest later on to recombine those, but at this point,
Just go for the
um,
two main players, okay.
you know, we honestly have more land than we can probably save rates over right now, so.
Bob?
Thank you for your time, today, Joe. We look forward to getting this thing done right this time.
Chris?
So do you have an internal timeframe and exit strategy when you want to divest yourself of the properties and be out of here? You said it's an expensive proposition, but as we've seen, so there must be some sort of clock that's ticking at this point.
Well, the clock that ticks obviously is the cost of upkeep, the
Sure.
cost of maintaining the SRA, the cost of maintaining the property, real estate taxes, et cetera, et cetera. We do not have a time frame. Our clients, as I mentioned, are pension plans. They invest for the long term. We obviously need to get a return on that investment and make sure it's a prudent investment. Look, this development process here is going to stretch out over quite a few years. I would guess it's more than a decade.
Because that ROI at some point, teeters, it goes the other way at some point.
Look,
We've seen so many people.
There'll be multiple cycles, right? There will be cycles that we go through as well. But no, we don't have a time frame, and we're committed to try to make this thing work and put the resources into it, both monetary resources and other resources. We think this is a great project, and we thought it was a great project when we loaned on it. We were very disappointed in the outcome there. Quite honestly, we were surprised at the outcome,
Right.
as many people were. But we think with the competent development team that this thing can finally achieve its potential.
Okay. And to piggyback on a point you just made, you loaned on it based upon the vision that was presented to you by previous master developer of the build out, where it's heading, so on and so forth. I would assume that was, calculated in your decision making to lend them, nearly $100 million or whatever the term was. That being said, is there a similar vision of development that will occur, or will that kind of parse itself or come out in the RFP that's being presented? And
I think the new development vision is something that we will work on in tandem with the developer. I don't think that we completely bought into their ultimate vision. I think their ultimate vision was flawed. We did think that there was still development potential here sufficiently enticing to make the project work. But if the direct question is, do I see 30-story towers,
Right.
the structured
No,
parking here,
right.
I don't.
okay, and you
never-
didn't is probably the
And we
more
did.
important question.
And we did.
Okay. So you saw, probably a lot of us did, if they get 30%, if they got 30 or 40% of that vision correct, everything would be great.
Right, exactly.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, just to kind of build on that, so certainly our lesson learned is partnership and accountability. So you're putting together this RFP, you're looking for being more of a partner in what that RFP is in performance. And that was the lesson learned from what we saw from Elstar, that we really have the accountability of where they're going. So I can see that you have a very different vision and a more active role, at least for the starting of how the master developer is in place.
Yeah, well, we are hands-on investors on the equity side, so we would always envision to have a significant role in the project. We're not, our vision is not to get a development partner and then kind of, just sit back and collect checks or send checks, whatever the case may be.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions for the staff? I know you guys have been working on these comments.
I'd just like to say that it's been great working with Joe and his staff. They've been extremely responsive. They're working very well with us on getting our RFP together, and I'm going to be speaking on more of this when it comes up to my report.
Excellent, Jim.
Yeah, I echo Eric's comments. Joe's been a breath of fresh air and very professional and level-headed, and we're working with Joe and his team every day. And then, as you know, there's a lot of information to sift through and to present in a concise manner for an RFP, and we're working through that process. So we look forward to continuing through it.
Excellent, thank you. I'm gonna go to the audience and gonna start with Councilor Smart, and then I'll go through, just if you could point out the questions through the board, and then, you know, if we wanna try to keep it in track with just an update of what's going on with the master developer. Councilor Smart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for the update, Joe. So I know that you said that you've had 3 or 4 months to kind of get your hands around exactly what you have here, what you bought. So the biggest question I think we've all had for many years is the infrastructure. So I just, like water and sewer, water source and water supply for the project. I just want to make sure that, you know, you are completely upfront with your RFP and your master developers that you'll be interviewing, that they understand that there's a requirement for water for the project. Have you had time to kind of wrap your arms around that?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there's no point in bringing a development partner in here with a failed understanding of what's here and an incomplete understanding of what's here. So certainly, we are including all of the challenges as well as the opportunities in the RFP.
Right, because I think that we all talked about every time another parcel is taken from the 300 plus acres of the actual development, it's just less of a piece that is gone that is going to cover the cost of that infrastructure. So, you know, I think we just, the board has been, and I think we as, you know, Weymouth officials and you as the, hopefully the owner of the property, need to be mindful of every time we parcel one off and approve it, it's just less that's gonna cover the full cost of that infrastructure, so.
Yeah, we absolutely understand that there needs to be a plan in place and there needs to be a funding mechanism to get to that point.
Appreciate it, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Steve started, then I'll go to Mary, then Joe, okay? Steve.
Joe, I just want to thank you, first of all, for investing in us way back when, okay? I'm a resident here for a long time. But I have 2 questions for you. I did some reading about Related and learned that they're the #1 real estate company in New York City to begin with, let alone who knows whatever. So I just wondered, they obviously, in Hudson Yards, they obviously had to respond, I would assume, because of the enormity of the private project that it is, you know, to an RFP-RFQ. And I just wondered if you've asked them if they have samples of RFP-RFQs to help the group here to put them together, or?
If I could, you know, we're working with our legal counsel, and we're getting, trying to get samples from other BRACs out there.
Okay.
So that's something we're doing internally to try to understand what
Sure.
an RFP would look like. I didn't want to answer for Joe, but that's something we're doing as the committee itself, and then working in conjunction.
But it's very valuable to have samples, I think, that, you know, might, you know, the nice thing about Related is they really believe in architectural design as being the driving force. And I think that's a lesson to keep in mind here. It's just not a boilerplate place here, okay? I don't think, at any rate. So he answered the question.
Absolutely. That was gonna be my answer is that, again, Eric and Jim have been very good at finding great examples that we can use,
Okay.
that are more on point here than particularly like the Hudson Yards or something of that magnitude.
Okay.
And we know that project well, we're invested with Related in that project, so you know, we've got a good working relationship with Related.
Okay. Okay, second and final question, I guess, is, usually when an investment goes wrong or a project, you know, hits the skids or whatever, you go back and say, well, what did I do wrong? You know, what were the lessons learned from this investment? Okay, and that's my question to you is, it seems to me that you must have made the same mistake as we did here in doing due diligence on the financial viability of Elstar. How did we blow that?
It's a very good question, and you know, in the investment world, you always have to ask yourself what you did wrong, and you need to learn from your mistakes. I'll be very candid here. We had some questions around them as a company. But we did believe, at least on the portion of the property that we loaned on, that it was really hard to mess it up, to be quite honest. We did not think that would happen. I think the lesson we learned in that is that no matter how attractive the project is or how good the underwriting looks, you just can't blow through a yellow sign when you have some signals that might warn you about the competence or other issues of a partner or a borrower.
I mean, we made the same mistake, and obviously, even in our DDAs, we were supposed to have checked on the financial viability, and that was passed on to us by others. And so, if you have any advice that you can pass on, you know, because your world is financial world.
I think working from the process, I think we're very aware, Steve, of what we need to do, and that's why, you know, as we work with Washington Capital, it will be a very detailed process, detail-oriented process to make sure we include stopgaps for things that we might have missed in the past. So certainly, when we you know, we can't put a finger on every little thing, but if we can get the vast majority of it under control, then that would be good.
So just to call it to your attention so that you are aware of it, to avoid that, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Mary, you're next.
Yes, I'm Mary Parsons from Union Street in Rockland, and I live in one of the stakeholder communities that is really getting nothing out of this at the moment, other than traffic. So my question is the permanent water and sewer that needs to be brought in here, because that requires hundreds of millions of dollars in investment, and that hasn't happened yet, and it's been 20 years and ongoing. Right now, the developer is responsible for widening roads in Rockland to handle the traffic, and that hasn't happened either. So there's multiple things, because I was on the Citizens Advisory Committee for the MEPA process for this. There's multiple things that have to be done all at the same time. So you might be putting out a RFP for a master developer, but that leads to the other question: are you going to pay this master developer, or are you selling your parcels to this master developer? And it'd be nice to have a timeline to know who's going to come and bring in that permanent water and sewer.
Like I said, we understand the infrastructure challenges. I can't tell you that I have a prepackaged solution, because that's something we will have to work out in conjunction with a development partner that we select. So we absolutely understand the challenges and the obligations, and that is part of the package that we're going to have to make sure that we meet the requirements that we have to meet.
It's a daunting task, I know.
Hello, Mary.
For now.
Okay.
Joseph Shea, 3 Wyman Road, Abington, the Abington Advisory Board member. One comment I have is that there's 3 master developers we've had in. 2 of them promised they was going to get something done on commercial. Both of them failed. I had my serious doubts about how hard they tried. Starwood at least was honest. They said they didn't care about the commercial. But without commercial, I think that it's very difficult to see how this is going to work financially, especially for the 3 towns involved. I mean, we can't afford a very large housing development here with nothing else. And I don't think it would be feasible to do it, because you would attract people coming in. Are you going to try, is the RFP process and the work with the master development candidates going to make sure they understand that there are commitments to the commercial light industrial development?
We are making sure that all the obligations are disclosed and identified in the process.
One comment related to that, at one point we had something in various agreements with the developer, the mayor, the last one they known at, there was a certain timetable, you can only develop so much residential housing without developing commercial. I'd like to see if that can get back in, because otherwise I think we're going to get, we have a danger we get back in. I don't know how we would do it, but I just think that, and I have other question, but I think Tom's comments and the other comments have relieved me somewhat, a great deal. The SRA is working together with Washington Capital on the RFP process.
If I could comment again on that, Joe, it's the conversation we've had over the last 4 months has probably been the best conversation, at least in my experience of this board, and I know the people have been involved prior to me, but the communication, Joe and I are probably speaking weekly, if not 3-4 times a week, and I know staff are meeting, and we're having very frank conversations and really trying to communicate all concerns, and everything that has been said tonight has been communicated and continues to figure out how we're going to work through it. So it's we're really having that conversation that helps both sides understand what the needs are moving forward.
Does the SRA have an approval or a final review right on both the RFP and the selection of master developer?
We're currently working through that right now to time that out so they can include it in their RFP and move it forward.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other members? Yes, ma'am.
Tricia Price, Weymouth. Beginning the project, when I first moved into Weymouth, and we played the tile game with L&R about what the towns wanted in their development. And the BRAC laws state that the development of the former South Weymouth Naval Air Station needs to be an economic generator. And housing is a secondary economy to a primary economic generator. Having met with L&R, having met with Starward and L-Star personally, I brought to them the final environmental impact report and commented that there's an awful lot of infrastructure investment that's required. It seems to me L&R skimmed off a layer of the cream of the property, and the margin that they saved by developing housing on a clear-cut, flat property should have been the margin that goes towards developing that type of infrastructure. Starwood did the same. Not too sure what L&R did. Doesn't seem like they kind of got nailed in this process too. But as a citizen who has sat through numerous town council meetings, and I've been at the State House at Economic Development Committee meetings, hearing Weymouth officials say that they want to proceed with the development, desperately so, because our budget requires it. We've heard of plans and zoning variances and whatnot, kind of like scoot over a little bit in the movie theater. Just scoot over a little bit. Just scoot over a little bit. And next thing you know, that taxpayers of Weymouth are on the floor. And it's difficult for me to not think one way or another, taxpayers are going to pick up this infrastructure cost. At the Economic Development Subcommittee hearing at the state, when the legislation was changed, it was clear that that was only in the interest of the developers, that everyone desperately wanted this to get through to get tax revenue. And all we have is housing. So I'm very curious to see where the margin is in this property to deal with such infrastructure costs when it seems the cream of this land is done. There's land use controls with Superfund sites, toxic plumes on properties, and where is the margin for a developer so that the towns can realize this revenue stream that was promised us 2 years ago?
Well, that is the challenge that we need to figure out, quite honestly. I can't tell you how a development partner that we work, that I can tell you how we're gonna meet all those challenges. Clearly, we have to find an intersection of something that is economically feasible and meets the needs of the towns and the state. Everybody has a stake in this thing, and we just have to find that intersection. I'm very optimistic that there is an intersection that we can find there.
Miss, I have to comment. Great question, very cogent points. I'm a resident, I've been here 2 years, I've done a deep dive into the project to fully understand it, and just as a point of fact, which is maybe underappreciated by some, this has been an enormous revenue generator for the town of Weymouth. In excess of $3 million annually, $2.5 million net probably to the bottom line. It's been, by any measure, for a town of Weymouth's size, if not a home run, at least a double to this point. And there's sort of this idea that it's been a drain on the Weymouth economy because of housing, and nothing can be further from the truth. And those are just the numbers.
It's the alignment with the BRAC laws. And this project has not proceeded aligned with the BRAC laws at all.
Just, we don't want to get too far off the subject about the master developer. Joe, you had your hand up first, then Mary, I'll get to you next.
I've been involved in local government since 1978. One thing that has become clear over those years, through my time as a selectman and as assessor, residential housing in the long run overall is a cost to a city or a town because of the education costs. The rule of thumb has been for every dollar you bring in for residential tax, real estate taxes, you pay out $1.03 in costs. Now, this may be different and so forth, but in the long run, and you will get some money up front for construction fees, but you will not get money in the long run. And I also, as I said earlier, I don't think how much more you can develop the land without adding things like these stores and other things people can work at. A residential only is not what's intended, and I think in the long run it will be a disaster.
And I don't,
You were gonna say the same thing. Go
I
ahead.
don't think the intent on anybody's part is to have a residential only development here at Southfield Union Point.
Mary, yeah.
Yeah, I can clear this up because I was there when the Navy was here. There are 3 conveyances. Basically, we use 2. One is the economic development conveyance, which does not include housing. That's per the Navy's term. They see that as not an economic generator because it doesn't generate permanent jobs. That's also why the Navy is put a sale price on this, because they weren't told of the housing when LNR in 2005 started changing things. When they found out, that's where the $25 million sale price came. There's 738 acres that are taken through the National Park Service that basically borders the neighborhoods in my town and part of Abington. That's because it's a buffer between my neighborhood and any development that's here, and people like that. Then there's the other issue of the Navy hired a biologist, did a study, and found rare species on this property, reported it to Natural Heritage, and that's another 449 acres that has to be dealt with. And in their permit is hinging on the MEPA process here, and it says the landholder is responsible for maintaining. If not the landholder, it will be the SRA, and if not the SRA, it's going to be the homeowners association. So it trickles down the line, just so that you know it's a complex property. And there are documents, and I can give you these documents if you need it. I know they have the documents, and I have the Navy documents. And the Navy's going to be looking for a payment come this December.
Yeah, we're aware of all the things that are out there.
Thank you for your time you've spent learning more about the project, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Joe.
And thank you for listening to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay, next, status of the Parkway Maintenance Agreement between the SRA and the Southfield Landowners Association. Jim, that's a little bit on both of us. That's still being worked out. That's in a phase. We're just trying to get that to an understanding. I know Attorney Galvin's working on that with the attorney for the Southfield Landowners Association, so I hope to have an update for the next meeting. I know I saw some emails exchanged today on how to, starting that discussion back up. I think everybody was just kind of busy, and then we'll get this on the top of the list.
That's correct.
Okay, excellent, Jim, thank you. Treasurer's report.
Good evening. I just wanted to go through a couple different points tonight. First of all, I would like to say that we are working along through the RFP process with Washington Capital, and it's going along, at a pace that is something that we need to have some patience with. Is all I caution everybody with. For the FY19 budget so far, we're going to be coming in well under budget due to the fact that there was a lot of vacancies in positions and a lot of expenditures for professional services that were not used over the past year. With that being said, of course, we also did not get massive developer fees last year. These will most likely offset each other. So I'm assuming we're going to come in somewhere around a break even this year in our actuals. I'm hoping to have the books closed out sometime end of July, beginning of August, and get audited timely this year and get that on time to the state. And I'll be passing those numbers on to you as soon as I get to that. The reimbursement agreement with Washington Capital has now finally come back from our council. I have provided you with a draft of it in there, and passed it along to Washington Capital as well. They've already picked up on something that needed to be amended with just the names in there, as well as I had requested a couple items from Bob to look at, but the essence of it is all there before you. It's mainly who we are, who they are, that there is nothing outside of this specific agreement for them to reimburse us for costs on a month-to-month basis that's being addressed by this. We're not waiving anything, we're not adding anything outside of that. It's specifically just to address that they're gonna basically keep us afloat on a month-to-month basis during this interim time period. So I urge you to take a look at that. If you've got any comments you wanna get back to me, please do it as soon as possible, and I'll make sure to address them.
Harold, you said,
We're thinking way too much alike today. Can you send it out via email to the board to say?
absolutely, that way we can
Yeah.
redline it.
Absolutely,
Send it back to
yeah.
you.
That'd be great, thank you.
Would it be, I guess in the interest of time, if, and I understand there probably are technical changes, but in terms of the substance of it, would it behoove us to approve in concept the substance of the agreement subject to technical changes, so we're not waiting another 3 weeks to come back to
And approval.
I think so, honestly, I think you ought to give the authority to the chair to sign off on the contract as a board or something like that, subject to that, is what I would suggest.
And I'm fine with that, and then again, that would be vetted through our legal counsel before we, finalize.
And he has already delivered this to me as it is, and we have gone back and forth on it at least once.
Well, in order to further the discussion, I'll make a motion that, subject to technical changes that are, that the substance of the article, of the agreement that's before us, that we allow the chairman to fully execute the contract, subject to technical changes. After any substantial changes, it would have to come back to the board, but as it sits here today with what I've read, I don't have a particular problem with the substance of it. Again, if you want to put a nice neat bow on it, that's fine.
Having substantial or material is probably a better word.
What about people?
Is there a problem with waiting? When is our next meeting?
July 10th.
July 10th, it's just that it would be effective as of July 1st. That's all.
And if not, we have to put a meeting before.
Effective as of July 1st, okay. All right, that's fine. All right.
I honestly, the way that Washington Capital's been operating with us, I'm pretty sure that it's really not a big deal with them. They'd be honoring it as of July 1st. That's fine.
So you have a motion.
Yeah, we have a motion. Do we have a second on
I'll
that?
second it.
Second. Do we have any other discussion on that? Seeing here, none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? That's unanimous. Okay.
Do you want the technical changes by the end of the week?
Please do.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I'm assuming if I don't get anything by Friday, that it's accepted.
Can I just ask one question, just giving it a quick look?
Sure.
Looking at the top of page 5.
Yep.
On the event that fails to pay by monthly installments, again, we assess them 1.5% interest, is that standard municipal
I'm
interest
sorry?
rate? Paragraph 1, top of page 5,
Yep.
the assessment of interest, is that standard, would a municipality do the same?
Yeah, this is actually probably slightly more than what that would be. I believe it's 14% for the, for towns. So this came from Bob, so.
Have we done that before?
Yes.
Yes, we have. We've done that. We
Nobody
did this.
paid it,
We
but
did
we
this.
assessed it, we billed it, but it didn't get paid,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
You can assess them all you want.
Keep sending it.
I'm doubling your assessment. That's nice.
Did you have any,
Sense of tone, that was why I
Yeah, yeah, no,
was
that's
disappointed to
fine.
see that there.
did you have any transfers tonight? I saw that in the agenda.
I did not have any transfers. I'm going to be closing the books, and that's why there also is a need for a July 10th meeting, because they need to be done by July 15th to cover a prior year.
Okay, perfect. That was answer my next
Yep.
question. Thank you, Eric. Next week, the next one.
We did a vote on that. Motion made and seconded.
Yeah,
No, we voted.
No, we voted on it.
Yeah, you voted
Yes,
yes.
you voted yes.
Did they vote?
I can read the vote again
On
if
a
you'd like.
motion, yeah.
They did.
He didn't
Yeah, they
vote
voted.
second.
Okay.
Motion and a second.
I was
Then I had a question.
daydreaming apparently.
No, Pat brought it
Then
back.
I had a question.
All right, all right.
Item number 6, the executive session to go into negotiations with non-union personnel and to reconvene open session. And number 7, the land use administrative administrator, the salary discussion vote. Those will be continued to the July 10th meeting. We're just working on some things out with Trent Galvin and our land use administrator. So those will be continued to the next meeting. I'll let everybody know if that will be before, or most likely it will be before the meeting. So just prepare on July 10th, that will probably be out of the gate. We have no topics not reasonably anticipated by the chairman 48 hours in advance of the meeting. Public comments on the subject talked about tonight.
Joseph Shea, 31 Road, the fields are still unavailable for use. As soon as they cover them, there's something.
The recreation facility?
Yeah.
That is through the individual, they're a separate landowner. It's not nothing to do with Washington Capital related. They're separate owners of that, and you'd have to contact the person there. We're not sure, Jim might know, but he could. Yeah. Yeah, if you contact Jim, he can get you the contact of the
Yeah,
owners.
if you could, because there's some discussion now, people feel we need more playing fields, and I'd like to see what's available here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Again, our next meeting is July 10th, 2019, and do we have a motion to adjourn?
So,
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed?